"Hey, it's warm here. Stay with me. The apartment is quiet tonight." Stillness rests in every corner. Warmth lingers in the air without effort. And somewhere nearby, the radiator makes its quiet sound in the corner. That metallic tick that happens when heat moves through old pipes, irregular and soft. Part of the apartment's voice at this hour, when the city outside has grown still, and the windows show only darkness and the distant glow of buildings that never fully sleep. A lamp in the corner casts its circle of warm light across the arm of the couch and onto the wooden floor beside it. The bulb not particularly bright, just enough to see by, just enough to make the rest of the room exist in gentle shadow, where shapes are visible, but details fade into softness. The ceiling holds its familiar cracks, thin lines that have been there for years, mapped across plaster that was white once and has yellowed slightly with time, and these cracks catch the lamplight at certain angles, creating small shadows that look like rivers seen from very far above. Somewhere in the building, a pipe makes a sound, water moving through walls on its way to somewhere else. A brief rush, and then quiet again. The kind of sound that happens in old buildings where plumbing has its own schedule and its own reasons for doing what it does. The window shows the city at the hour when most windows have gone dark, a few lit rectangles in the building across the way, lives continuing behind glass at distances too far to see clearly. Just the fact of light and the suggestion of presence. Someone awake, someone doing whatever people do when the night is this deep. A blanket lies folded over the back of the couch, soft fabric in some muted color that the lamplight doesn't quite reveal, and it waits there in its folded state, available but not needed, part of the furniture of comfort that accumulates in spaces where comfort matters. The floor extends from wall to wall in old hardwood, boards that have contracted and expanded through seasons, leaving small gaps between them in places. And these boards hold the history of footsteps they don't remember, of furniture moved and lives lived, and all the ordinary moments that happen in apartments over decades. A clock somewhere shows the time, but doesn't announce it, hands pointing to numbers that indicate how late the hour has become. And time passes in whatever way time passes when no one is watching it closely, when the difference between 1 minute and the next matters less than it might during daylight. The heat in the apartment has reached that comfortable state where it's neither noticed nor missed, the temperature having found its equilibrium, the air warm enough that being still feels natural, that the body doesn't seek to generate its own warmth through movement. A book rests on the small table beside the couch, closed and quiet, its pages holding whatever story it holds for whoever might open it next. And the cover shows wear from handling, spines slightly bent, the signs of a book that has been read and set down and picked up again over time. The walls of the apartment hold their paint in the way old walls do, slightly uneven in places where repairs were made and painted over, and the color is something between white and cream, warmed further by the lamplight, until it becomes a kind of soft amber that makes the space feel enclosed and protected. Outside the window, the city makes its reduced sounds. Traffic that has thinned to occasional passing. The distant rumble of something large moving through streets far away. And these sounds enter the apartment, softened by glass and walls and distance, becoming more texture than event. A cup sits on the table beside the book, empty or nearly so, its contents consumed at some point without particular attention, and the cup waits to be carried to the kitchen or refilled or simply left where it is until morning, its purpose served, its presence unremarkable. The couch has molded itself to the shapes of bodies over years of use, cushions that compress in certain places and hold their compression, fabric worn smoother where arms rest and heads lean. And this wearing is comfortable rather than shabby, the furniture having become what it needs to be through patient occupation. A plant sits on the windowsill, something that tolerates indirect light and irregular watering, its leaves dusty and slightly drooping, but alive, reaching toward the window out of habit rather than need at this hour when no light comes from that direction. And the plant exists in its quiet way, growing or not growing, doing whatever plants do in the dark. The refrigerator in the kitchen makes its low hum, a sound so constant it disappears from awareness, until a moment like this when awareness has nothing else to occupy it, and the hum is the sound of cold being maintained, of food being preserved, of electricity doing its invisible work. Shadows gather in the corners of the room where the lamplight doesn't reach, soft accumulations of darkness that aren't threatening, just absent of illumination, and these shadows hold whatever objects exist in those corners, shapes suggested but not revealed. The radiator ticks again, metal adjusting to temperature, and the sound is familiar enough to be comforting, part of the apartment's nighttime vocabulary, a voice that speaks without meaning, that fills small silences without creating noise. A rug lies on the floor beneath the coffee table, its pattern faded from years of feet and sunlight, edges slightly curled, and the rug provides what rugs provide: softness underfoot, visual interest, a boundary that defines the living space within the larger space of the room. The window glass shows a faint reflection of the interior, the lamp visible as a soft glow, the shapes of furniture ghosted on the surface. And beyond this reflection, the city spreads out in its nighttime configuration, buildings and streets, and the occasional light that moves. The air in the apartment carries the smell of the place itself, that particular combination of old wood and fabric, and whatever has been cooked, and whatever products have been used for cleaning. A smell that belongs to this space and no other, that someone returning after absence would recognize as home. A doorway leads to a hallway that disappears into darkness. The rooms beyond unlit and unused at this hour, bedroom and bathroom, and perhaps a small study, all of them existing in their nighttime states, waiting for nothing, occupied by furniture and silence. The ceiling light fixture hangs unused, turned off in favor of the lamp's softer glow, and it holds its position as it has held its position for years, decorative in a style that was chosen by someone at some point for reasons that may or may not still make sense. Outside, a car passes somewhere, the sound of tires on pavement, of an engine working, and then the sound fades as the car continues to wherever it's going, leaving the street quiet again, leaving the apartment to its interior sounds and its interior silence. The couch cushions hold their shapes in the lamplight, fabric that shows its texture in the angled illumination, patterns or solid colors. It's hard to tell in this light, and the couch offers its invitation to sit or lie down, to rest against its softness, though no one is accepting that invitation at this particular moment. A small stack of mail rests on a table near the door, envelopes, and perhaps a magazine. The day's delivery left where it was placed, and not yet sorted, not yet opened, waiting for attention that will come eventually. The small obligations of daily life accumulated and deferred. The floor creaks somewhere, not from weight, but from temperature, wood contracting in the night air, the building settling in whatever ways buildings settle, and the sound is brief and unremarkable, absorbed into the general quiet. A coat hangs on a hook by the door, evidence of a life that goes outside, that travels through weather and city streets, and the coat waits in its hanging state, ready to be worn when wearing it becomes necessary. For now, just part of the room's accumulated contents. The lamp cord trails across the floor to an outlet, a thin line of brown or black against the wood, the practical infrastructure that makes light possible, that connects the soft glow to the electricity that runs through walls, invisible except when looked for. The window shows its frame of painted wood, slightly chipped in places, the layers of previous paint colors visible where the current coat has worn away. A history of choices made by people who lived here before, who painted these windows and looked out of them at different versions of the same view. The building around the apartment exists in its nighttime quiet. Other units above and below and beside. Other lives in their own midnight states, sleeping or not sleeping, and the walls that separate these lives hold their sounds and their secrets, letting through only the occasional muffled hint of someone else's existence. A photograph hangs on the wall in a simple frame, the image too dim in this light to make out clearly, just the suggestion of faces or places or moments that mattered enough to be preserved and displayed. And the frame holds its position on the wall, slightly crooked perhaps, but not enough to demand straightening. The heat coming from the radiator creates a subtle movement in the air, warmer near the source and cooler near the window. A gentle circulation that doesn't rise to the level of draft. Just the physics of temperature doing what temperature does in enclosed spaces. A pair of slippers rests beside the couch, placed there at some point and not moved since. The kind of footwear that belongs entirely to indoor life, that never sees weather or pavement, and they wait in their paired position, toes pointing in whatever direction they were left pointing. The darkness outside the window has a particular quality at this hour, not the darkness of early evening when the city is still winding down, but the deeper darkness of true night, when the time has passed midnight and morning is still far away, a darkness that feels settled and complete. Dust has gathered on surfaces that don't get touched often. The top of the bookshelf, the base of the lamp, the edges of picture frames, and this dust is visible in certain angles of light, a thin layer of the ordinary accumulation that happens in spaces where people live. The kitchen extends beyond a partial wall, counters and appliances visible in the dimness, the shapes of cabinets, and the glint of a faucet catching what little light reaches that far. And the kitchen waits in its kitchen way, ready for use, but not being used, the sink empty, the stove cold. A throw pillow has been positioned at one end of the couch, its fabric coordinating or contrasting with the couch itself, impossible to tell in lamplight, and the pillow offers its small comfort to whoever might lean against it, maintaining its shape through the compression of being leaned upon. The window lets in the distant sounds of the city, muffled by glass, but present. The hum of a ventilation system on another building, the far-off wail of a siren that rises and fades, the general low frequency of a place that never truly stops, even at this hour when stopping seems like all anyone would want. A magazine lies on the coffee table, its cover showing something that was current when it was printed, and the pages have been flipped through at least once, some of them folded back, the magazine read, or at least looked at, waiting now for the recycling pile, or perhaps another casual browse. The walls hold more than paint. They hold the absorbed sounds of years, conversations and music, and the everyday noises of living. And though these sounds have faded, they've left something behind, a quality that makes the space feel inhabited even in silence, a warmth that isn't just about temperature. A small table stands against one wall, its surface holding odds and ends, keys perhaps, a bowl of change, the small objects that accumulate at entry points, the things that get set down when coming home and picked up when leaving, the detritus of daily transitions. The lamp makes a slight electrical hum that would only be noticed in true silence, which rarely exists in a city apartment. And this hum is the sound of light being produced, of electricity becoming illumination, a small miracle of physics happening continuously in the corner of the room. Outside, another window in the building across the way goes dark, someone finally going to bed, or simply turning off a lamp like the one that still burns here. And this small change in the cityscape happens without significance. Just one less rectangle of light in the grid of windows. The floorboards have a particular grain that catches the lamplight, lines and whorls in the wood that were made by the tree before it was a floor. And these patterns repeat with variations, each board similar but unique, fitted together by someone long ago who probably didn't think about who would be looking at them decades later. A power strip rests on the floor near the wall, multiple devices plugged into its outlets, phone chargers, and the lamp, and perhaps a small fan for summer that hasn't been put away. And small lights glow on some of these devices, tiny indicators of standby mode, of electronics waiting to be used. The curtains hang beside the window, pulled back to let in whatever light the night offers, and they gather in their hanging folds, fabric that might be chosen for color, or for weight, or simply because it was available when curtains were needed, serving their purpose of controlling light when light needs controlling. A glass of water sits on the small table by the couch, half full or half empty, waiting to be finished or to be forgotten until morning, when its room temperature contents will seem less appealing and the water holds perfectly still, its surface undisturbed by any vibration or breath. The building makes another sound, something structural, the kind of noise that could be interpreted as settling, or as the response to wind, or as nothing at all. Just the building being a building, existing in the way buildings exist, constantly making small adjustments to the forces acting upon them. A calendar hangs somewhere in the apartment, though it's too dark to see from here, showing a month that's either current or past, showing days crossed off or left unmarked. The small record keeping of time that people maintain to feel like time is being managed rather than simply passing. The apartment holds its particular silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of quietness, the kind of silence that has texture, that's made up of all the small sounds that are too soft to notice individually, but that combine into something that feels like peace. A pen lies on the coffee table beside the magazine, probably used to circle something or to write a note that has since been forgotten. And the pen rests in its ordinary way, a tool that served its purpose and was set down without thought about where it was being set. The window glass has a slight imperfection in one corner, a bubble or a ripple from when the glass was made, and this imperfection distorts the view slightly, makes the lights of the city waver in that one small spot, a minor flaw that goes unnoticed except when noticed. Somewhere in the building a door closes, the sound traveling through walls and floors to arrive here diminished but recognizable, someone going somewhere or coming back, and then quiet again, the building absorbing the interruption and returning to its baseline. The lampshade casts its patterns on the wall behind it, the texture of the fabric creating shadows that look almost intentional, decorative. And these patterns hold still because the lamp holds still, though they shift slightly when any vibration moves through the building. A pair of socks has been left on the floor near the couch, rolled together in the way socks get rolled when removed at the end of a day, and they rest there in their small fabric pile, waiting to be picked up or waiting to be stepped over, either outcome equally likely. The refrigerator cycles off, its hum stopping, and the apartment becomes incrementally quieter, the absence of that low drone creating a space that other sounds don't quite fill. And after a while, the refrigerator will cycle back on, and the hum will return without announcement. The ceiling shows its texture in the lamplight, that stippled surface that was popular at some point, practical for hiding imperfections, and the texture creates countless tiny shadows, a miniature landscape of peaks and valleys that exists just above head height, unexamined and unremarkable. A spider web stretches in one corner near the ceiling, its creator either present and hidden or long gone, and the web catches no light at this angle, invisible except when looked for, a construction project completed in secret, maintained or abandoned, depending on circumstances known only to spiders. The heat in the apartment has that quality of background warmth, not actively noticed, but always present, the kind of temperature that allows the body to forget about temperature, that removes one concern from the list of concerns that might otherwise occupy attention. The night outside the window doesn't change in any observable way. The same darkness, the same scattered lights in distant windows, the same silence of streets that have emptied, and this unchanging quality is part of what makes the hour feel suspended, held in place by its own stillness. A blanket has been left unfolded on one end of the couch, used at some point and not put away, and it lies there in its soft heap, a promise of warmth for whoever might want it, fabric that has served its purpose many times and will serve it again. The kitchen sink drips once, a single drop of water falling from the faucet to the basin, and the sound is small and sharp in the quiet, followed by nothing. The faucet holding its water until the next drip comes whenever it comes. A mirror hangs on one wall, reflecting a portion of the room back to itself, showing the lamp and its light and the shadows it creates, doubling the space in that illusory way mirrors have, making the apartment seem larger than it is, or at least deeper. The plant on the windowsill has a particular posture at night, its leaves hanging differently than they might during the day, responding to the absence of light, or simply resting in whatever way plants rest. And the soil in its pot is dark and probably due for water, but not urgently. Outside, a train passes somewhere in the distance, the sound of it carried through the night air, a low rumble and the clack of wheels on track, and then it fades as the train continues on its route, heading toward a destination that has nothing to do with this apartment or this hour. The walls meet the ceiling at angles that aren't quite perfect, old construction revealing itself in corners that are slightly off, in joints that have separated slightly over time. And these imperfections are character more than flaw, signs of a building that has been lived in rather than merely occupied. A candle sits on the bookshelf, unlit, its wick burned black from previous use, wax that has dripped and hardened on its sides, and the candle waits for the next time someone wants flame and flicker rather than the steady glow of electric light. The floor near the radiator is slightly warmer than the rest, the heat having soaked into the wood directly. And this gradient exists without being felt by anyone walking barefoot, a subtle geography of temperature that maps the apartment's relationship with its heating system. The bookshelf holds its collection in no particular order, spines of various heights and colors, some books placed properly, and some stacked horizontally where they wouldn't fit standing. A library accumulated over time for reasons that made sense at the moment of each acquisition. The window frame holds paint that has been painted over many times, each layer covering the last, and in places where the paint has chipped, the archaeology of color choices is visible. A green beneath the white, something darker beneath the green, the history of the apartment's appearances layered up. A sound comes from the hallway outside the apartment door, footsteps perhaps. Someone returning home at this late hour, and the footsteps pass by and continue up the stairs or down the corridor, the neighbor going wherever neighbors go, leaving the hallway silent again. The lamp casts its warm light onto the ceiling as well as the floor, creating an inverted pool of illumination above. And this ceiling glow is softer, more diffuse, the light having traveled farther and spread wider before reaching its destination. A small dish on the coffee table holds a few coins and a paperclip, the random collection of pocket contents emptied at some point, and these objects rest together with no relationship except proximity, waiting to be picked up or sorted, or simply left indefinitely. The curtains have a weight to them that helps them hang properly, fabric chosen for how it falls as much as how it looks. And they frame the window in their gathered folds, textile architecture that softens the hard rectangle of glass and wall. Outside, the moon might be visible from another window, or might be hidden by clouds or buildings. From this angle, only the apartment building across the way is visible, its face of windows and brick and fire escapes. A structure that has stood for decades, watching this structure stand for decades. The refrigerator clicks back on, the compressor engaging, the hum returning to fill the space it had vacated, and the apartment adjusts to this return, the baseline of background sound re-establishing itself as if it had never gone away. A throw pillow has fallen to the floor at some point, leaning against the base of the couch, not quite on the floor, but not on the couch either. caught in a position of transition that no one has bothered to resolve. And it stays there because nothing requires it to move. The smell of the apartment includes something like wood polish, probably from whenever the furniture was last dusted, a faint chemical sweetness mixed with the general smell of the place. And this smell is noticed only when attention turns to it, otherwise blending into the overall olfactory presence. A light switch on the wall near the door is in the off position, its toggle pointing down, controlling a light that isn't needed while the lamp does its work. And the switch waits there in its usual place, ready to be flipped when darkness needs to be banished from more than just the lamp's small circle. The floor has worn paths that aren't visible but are present, routes walked so many times that the wood has subtly compressed, from door to couch, from couch to kitchen. The daily patterns of living inscribed in the material of the home without anyone intending to write them. A photograph album rests on a shelf, its cover showing age, pages inside that hold images from years past, and the album sits there as albums do, preserving moments that seemed worth preserving, offering its contents to anyone who might flip through them, though no one is flipping tonight. The radiator makes a different sound now, more of a gurgle than a tick, water or air moving through the system. And this variation in the apartments, voice passes without comment, just another note in the continuous score of sounds that make up the night. Outside the city exists in its reduced state, the hour having winnowed away everyone who doesn't need to be awake, leaving streets and sidewalks and parks to their nighttime emptiness. And this emptiness is peaceful from behind glass, from within the warmth of an apartment that doesn't need to participate in it. A coffee table book sits on the coffee table, its presence both purposeful and decorative, showing art or photography or some other visual collection. And the book is large and heavy, and probably hasn't been opened in weeks or months, but it contributes something to the room by simply being there. The wall nearest the couch holds a slight warmth from the body heat of countless hours of sitting. Or perhaps that's imagination, the wall just being a wall, painted surface over plaster, over whatever structural elements hold the building up, serving its purpose of enclosure without any particular personality. A remote control rests on the arm of the couch, its buttons worn smooth in places from years of pressing, pointing toward a television that sits dark and silent across the room, the entertainment center unused at this hour, waiting for someone to activate it. The night has that quality of being deep enough that morning seems theoretical, something that will happen eventually according to the rules of astronomy and rotation. But that feels impossibly far from this moment, from this hour when the world outside has grown so quiet. A small vent near the floor lets heat into the room from the building system. The grill slightly dusty, warm air pushing through in ways that can be felt when standing near, but that disperse into the general warmth when farther away. The infrastructure of comfort doing its invisible work. The window shows its smudges when looked at from certain angles, fingerprints and nose prints from looking out, the marks of hands that raised or lowered the sash, the ordinary traces of interaction that windows accumulate and that are cleaned away periodically, and that return regardless. The ceiling fan hangs motionless above the room, its blade still, the chain pole dangling, unused in this season when heat comes from the radiator rather than needing to be circulated, and the fan waits for summer or for whatever occasion might call for its spinning. A jacket drapes over the back of a chair, left there rather than hung in the closet, and it holds its draped shape, arms hanging. The casual neglect that happens in private spaces where no one is coming to visit, where tidiness is optional. The building's water pipes make their sounds somewhere in the walls. Someone in another apartment using water at this hour, a shower perhaps, or a glass being filled. And these sounds travel through the building's body to arrive here as hollow echoes of utility. Outside, a light in the building across the way flickers, something wrong with the bulb or the wiring, and it flickers in an irregular pattern that would be annoying if watched, but that goes unnoticed when attention is directed elsewhere. The couch fabric has a texture that the lamplight reveals, a weave or a pattern pressed into the material, something that fingers would feel if they traced across it. And this texture is both visual and tactile, part of the object's presence in the room. A small figurine sits on a shelf among the books, something decorative, a souvenir perhaps, or a gift, and it holds its position with the patience of objects, waiting to be looked at or dusted or simply ignored as part of the accumulated contents of a life. The lamp's bulb has that warm color temperature that older bulbs have, or that newer bulbs approximate when set to a certain mode. And this warmth affects everything the light touches, making colors shift toward amber, making the whole room feel like a photograph taken through a filter. A shoe lies on its side near the door, its pair somewhere nearby, kicked off when entering and not lined up properly, and the shoe rests there in its fallen position, the small evidence of a transition from outside to inside that happened at some point and wasn't cleaned up. The night outside has no particular character beyond being night, no weather to speak of, no drama of sky or atmosphere, just the ordinary darkness that comes when the sun is on the other side of the planet, doing its work for other places, leaving this place to its electric light and its indoor warmth. The apartment holds all of this and more, objects and surfaces and spaces that have been gathered or inherited or simply accumulated, the material evidence of a life being lived in a particular place over a particular span of time, all of it silent now, all of it still, all of it waiting for nothing. The The coffee table shows its surface in the lamplight, wood or something made to look like wood, scratched and marked by use, but not badly. The kind of wear that speaks of a table that has held things and had things spilled on it and been lived with rather than preserved. A corner of the room gathers shadow in a way that makes it seem deeper than it is, the lamplight not reaching there fully, and this shadowed corner holds whatever it holds, the dark making its contents mysterious, without any actual mystery being present. The window glass vibrates slightly when a truck passes in the street below, a nearly imperceptible tremor that's felt more than heard. And then it stops as the truck moves on, the glass returning to its stillness, holding its view of the night without comment. Somewhere in the apartment, a smoke detector waits on the ceiling, its small light blinking periodically to indicate battery life, a green pulse that would be visible if anyone were looking up at the right moment, the small electronic heartbeat of safety equipment doing its vigilant work. The blanket on the couch has a particular smell, fabric that has been used and washed many times, holding some residue of laundry detergent and some essence of the bodies that have wrapped themselves in it, a smell that registers as comfort without being analyzed further. A stack of papers sits somewhere out of the lamplight's reach, probably on a desk in another room. Bills or documents or printouts of things that seemed important enough to print. And these papers wait in their stacked patience for attention that may or may not come. The floor has its own temperature, different from the air, the wood having absorbed the day's cool and the night's heat in its own way, and bare feet would know this, would feel the subtle variations as they moved across the boards, but no feet are moving at the moment. A small crack runs along the wall near the window, a settlement crack probably, the building having adjusted to its weight over decades. And this crack has been painted over several times, but always returns, a stubborn feature of the space that has become part of its character. The night seems to have no intention of ending, though of course it will, the darkness outside holding steady as if it could hold forever, as if morning were choice rather than an inevitability. And this quality of endless night is comfortable rather than concerning from within the warm apartment. The lamp does its quiet work of illumination, asking for nothing but electricity, providing its circle of light for whoever might want it, faithful in the way that objects are faithful, functioning because functioning is what it was made for. The walls contain whatever the walls contain, wiring that runs to outlets and switches, pipes that carry water to wherever water goes, insulation that holds the heat inside and the cold outside, the hidden infrastructure of modern living that works without acknowledgement. A photograph on a shelf shows something that was once present, a moment that existed and was captured, and now exists only in the image, and the photograph sits there in its frame, preserving what it preserves, offering its small window into the past to anyone who pauses to look. The radiator has settled into a steady warmth now, the ticking less frequent, the temperature stabilized, and the heat emanates from the metal in that radiating way heat has, warming the air nearest first, and then spreading outward to fill the space. Outside, a street light flickers in a way that might be failing bulb, or might be a moth interrupting the sensor, the light dimming and brightening in no particular rhythm. And this flickering creates small variations in the light that enters through the window, patterns on the floor that shift and settle. The couch has held its position in the room for years, probably, moved from time to time for cleaning, but returned to the same spot, and this spot has become where the couch belongs. The furniture and the room having reached an understanding about arrangement that persists through seasons. A pen cap lies under the coffee table, separated from its pen at some point and kicked under there by accident, and it rests on the floor in its small plastic existence, waiting to be discovered during cleaning or to be left there indefinitely. Either outcome equally likely. The walls have absorbed conversations that happened in this room, arguments and laughter and ordinary talk, none of it retained in any recoverable way, but all of it present somehow, the walls being witnesses to the life that has unfolded within them. A charging cable lies coiled on the small table, plugged into nothing at the moment, its purpose served for now, and the cable waits in its coiled state, ready to feed electricity to whatever device next needs feeding, part of the modern tangle of wires that keeps everything running. The night outside shows no stars from this window, the city's light pollution overwhelming whatever the sky might offer, just a general darkness overhead that could be clouds or could be nothing. The ceiling of the urban sky that city dwellers grow accustomed to not looking at. The floorboards have tiny gaps between them in places, the wood having shrunk over decades of winters, and these gaps are too small to catch toes, but visible if looked for, part of the aging that old apartments undergo, the slow transformation of materials that were once tight and new. The apartment has a particular quality at this hour that it doesn't have at others. Something about the combination of lamplight and outside darkness, and the quiet of the building, a feeling that the space is more private than usual, more enclosed, more separate from the rest of the world. A cup ring on the coffee table shows where a wet glass was set down at some point and not wiped up before it left its mark. And this ring is permanent now, part of the table's surface, a small damage that has become a feature through the alchemy of time and acceptance. The ceiling fixture has collected a few dead insects in its glass bowl, the small bodies visible as shadows from below, and these insects arrived at various points, drawn to light that they couldn't reach, dying in the attempt. Their remains undisturbed until the next cleaning comes. Outside, someone walks past on the street below, footsteps audible even through closed windows, the particular sound of shoes on pavement at night when other sounds have quieted. And then the footsteps fade as the walker continues wherever the walker is going. The plant on the windowsill has dropped a leaf at some point, the dried brown shape resting on the sill beside the pot, evidence of the plant's quiet struggle to survive on whatever care it receives. And this leaf will be noticed eventually and swept away or simply left until it crumbles. A small framed print hangs near the bookshelf, something decorative purchased at some point for reasons that seemed good at the time. And the print shows something, a landscape, or an abstract pattern or words, too dim to make out from where the lamplight reaches. The refrigerator hum has become part of the silence rather than an interruption of it. The sound so constant that attention slides off it, leaving it present but not noticed. Background noise that the brain has decided doesn't require further processing. A scratch on the wall near the light switch shows where keys or something hard made contact repeatedly. The accumulated damage of entering in the dark and reaching for the switch without quite knowing where hand meets wall. And this scratch has been painted over, but remains visible. A record of routine. The night has settled into its deepest phase, the hour having passed through evening and late evening into the territory of early morning that still feels like night. And this deep night has a weight to it, a stillness that seems to press gently against the windows from outside. The lamp creates its own small world of light and warmth, a bubble of illumination in the general darkness of the apartment. And this bubble is enough, is sufficient for whatever needs to be seen, is all the light that the hour requires or wants. The walls of the apartment have heard everything and remember nothing. Plaster and paint serving as boundaries without judgment. And the room exists within these boundaries in its contained way, private and enclosed and separate from the similar rooms in similar apartments throughout the building. A tissue has been left on the arm of the couch, crumpled and used and set aside. The small debris of being human that accumulates in private spaces. And it rests there waiting for the next trip to the wastebasket, waiting or simply existing without waiting. The window shows the building across the way with new clarity, now that no rain streaks the glass, just the clean view of brick and windows and fire escapes. A structure that looks back at this structure without looking. Two buildings facing each other as they have faced each other for decades. A spider makes its slow way across the wall near the ceiling, moving in that deliberate spider way, hunting or exploring or simply traveling. And this movement is too far from the lamplight to be seen clearly, just the suggestion of motion in the upper reaches of the room. The floor beneath the rug feels different than the floor beyond it. The rug providing a layer of softness and insulation, and this difference creates a subtle geography of texture, known to feet that walk this room regularly, unknown to guests guests who might visit rarely. A book has been left open on its face somewhere in the apartment, spine bent back, pages spread, the reader having set it down mid-passage and not returned, and the book waits in this position, holding its place without a bookmark, the pages slowly settling into their spread configuration. The night continues in its patient way, neither hurrying toward morning nor resisting it, just being night in the way that night is, darkness and quiet, and the reduced activity of a world that has mostly gone to sleep. A water glass shows a ring of dried residue inside, the evidence of water that evaporated at some point, leaving behind whatever minerals or particles it held, and this residue would be washed away when the glass is washed. But for now it remains, a tide line marking a level that no longer exists. The radiator makes a sound that might be a sigh if radiators could sigh, a release of pressure or a shift in the pipes, and the sound passes without repetition, a single note in the sporadic music of the heating system. The lampshade has a small tear in one seam, the fabric having pulled apart slightly, and this tear affects the light in a minor way, creating a thin line of brighter illumination that falls on the wall behind, a small imperfection that has become part of the lamp's character. The apartment breathes in its building way, the subtle exchange of air through whatever gaps and vents exist, too slow to feel, but present nonetheless. The space maintaining its atmosphere in the continuous way, enclosed spaces maintain themselves. A nail hole shows in the wall where something once hung, the picture or mirror removed at some point, and the hole left unfilled. And this small dark circle marks an absence, a memory of an object that lived on this wall before moving elsewhere or being discarded. The window frame has begun to separate slightly from the wall in one corner, a small gap that lets in cold air when the weather turns, and this gap has been caulked and sealed multiple times, but always returns, the building and the window having different ideas about where they should meet. Outside, the city sleeps in its fashion, which is to say it sleeps partially, always someone awake somewhere, always lights in some windows, always the hum of systems that don't stop. But the sleep is real enough, the reduced activity tangible, even from within an apartment several stories up. A cushion on a chair shows an indentation from being sat on, the foam compressed into a shape that approximates the shape that compressed it. And this indentation is temporary in principle, the foam slowly expanding back to its original form, but permanent in practice, the sitting happening too often for full recovery. The books on the shelf stand in their rows, their spines forming a kind of skyline, taller volumes next to shorter ones, thick ones beside thin, and this skyline is visible in the edge of the lamplight, a suggestion of reading material waiting to be read or reread. A single sock has ended up under the coffee table, separated from its partner through the mysterious processes that separate socks, and it lies there in its solo state, a small fabric question mark waiting to be matched or washed or simply discovered. The floor near the window is slightly cooler than the floor near the radiator, the temperature gradient of a room that's heated from one side, and this coolness is noticeable when standing there, a reminder that outside is cold even when inside is warm. The lamp has been burning for hours now, its bulb warm to the touch if anyone touched it, its light steady and unchanged, and it will burn until it's turned off or until the bulb fails, whichever comes first, faithful in its function until something stops it. A fly has found its way into the apartment despite closed windows, through some gap or seam that exists somewhere in the building's imperfect envelope. And the fly rests now on the wall, still at this hour, waiting for morning, or for whatever flies wait for. The walls hold their paint in that patient way walls have, accepting whatever color was applied, whatever imperfections in the application, and the paint ages in its place, slowly yellowing or fading depending on exposure to light, becoming the color of this particular room over time. A coaster sits on the coffee table, unused at the moment, its purpose of protecting the wood waiting to be fulfilled, and the coaster shows its design, something decorative or something practical, part of the collection of objects that have accumulated to address specific small needs. The building makes another sound, something in the walls or floor, the kind of noise that old structures make, settling or responding to wind, or simply existing in the way buildings exist. The sound coming from no particular direction and meaning nothing particular. Outside a siren rises in the distance, emergency or routine, impossible to tell, and the sound approaches and peaks and then recedes, the vehicle moving through the city on its necessary business, leaving the night quieter in its wake. The couch shows its age in the way the fabric has worn differently in different places, lighter where bodies rest most often, darker in the creases and corners. And this pattern of wear tells the story of use, of all the hours spent sitting in this particular spot. A phone charger lies coiled on the floor near an outlet, its device elsewhere at the moment, and the charger rests in its coiled state, the cord wrapped around itself in the way it was left, waiting to be useful or to be ignored. The refrigerator cycles off again, that click and descent into quiet, and the apartment adjusts once more to the reduced hum, the silence seeming louder for a moment before normalizing, the ear recalibrating to the new baseline of sound. A small table near the window holds a collection of objects that might be meaningful, a candle and a few small figurines, and perhaps a photograph, arranged in a way that suggests intention, a deliberate gathering of things that matter for reasons known only to whoever gathered them. The night outside has that quality of being late enough that even the latest workers have mostly gone home. the streets showing only the occasional taxi or delivery truck. The city at its quietest, the baseline hum reduced to its minimum. The lamplight reaches into the hallway slightly, not far, just enough to show that a hallway exists, that other rooms wait in darkness. And this reaching light creates a threshold between the illuminated space and the dark space, a boundary that could be crossed, but isn't being crossed. The apartment exists in its particular way at this particular hour. The combination of all its elements creating something that couldn't be replicated elsewhere. This light and this warmth and these objects in these positions, the unique configuration of a life being lived in a space designed for living. A newspaper from several days ago sits folded on the coffee table. Its news no longer new, but not yet disposed of. And the paper waits to be recycled or read again, or simply left, until someone notices and decides what to do with it. The ceiling holds its position above everything, plaster and paint, and whatever structure keeps it from falling, and the ceiling is unremarkable except when looked at, when attention turns upward and notices the texture and the color and the way the light plays across its surface. Outside the building across the way shows one more window going dark, someone finally going to bed, and the grid of windows loses another point of light, the building's face becoming incrementally darker, the night claiming another small victory. A houseplant sends one tendril reaching toward the window, the plant seeking light that isn't there at this hour, growth that happens too slowly to observe, but that results in this reaching, this vegetable striving toward something better. The floor shows its character in the lamplight, the grain of the wood, the marks of feet and furniture, the history of the space written in its surface. And this character is visible now in a way it might not be during daylight, when more light washes out the subtleties. A pen sits in a cup on a shelf, among other pens and pencils, the writing implements gathered in their holder, waiting to be selected and used and returned. The cup doing its small organizational work without asking for acknowledgement. The warmth in the apartment has that quality of being stable, the temperature having found its equilibrium, the heat output matching the heat loss. And this stability is comfortable in the way that not having to think about temperature is comfortable. A small scratch on the floor shows where something heavy was dragged at some point, furniture being rearranged without lifting. And this scratch has become part of the floor's collection of marks, evidence of all the moments of carelessness or expediency that happen in lived-in spaces. The night continues its slow passage toward morning, though morning still feels distant. The darkness outside showing no sign of the lightning that will eventually come, the hour existing in its bubble of present tense without obvious connection to what comes next. The walls meet the floor in their molded corners, trim painted the same color as the walls or a different color, the kind of detail that was chosen at some point and has remained unchanged since, part of the room's baseline appearance that goes unnoticed until noticed. A drawer somewhere in the apartment holds the odds and ends that all drawers collect, batteries and rubber bands and keys to unknown locks, the detritus of daily life that doesn't have another home. And the drawer holds these things without organizing them, waiting for the rummaging hand that might need something. The window glass shows its age in small ways, the slight waviness of older glass, the bubbles and imperfections that modern glass doesn't have. And these imperfections are character rather than flaw, signs of a building from a time when manufacturing was less precise. Outside, a light rain might be beginning, or might just be moisture in the air, something that makes the street gleam slightly differently. And if it is rain, it's light enough to be silent, to fall without the sound of falling, just the visual evidence of wet surfaces catching light. The couch cushions have found their positions over years of being sat upon and stood up from, each cushion slightly different from its neighbors, shaped by different weights and different habits of sitting. And these positions are what feels right now, what the cushions return to when displaced. A candle on the shelf has been burned before, its wax showing the crater where the flame consumed it, the wick blackened and shortened, and the candle waits for its next lighting, offering the promise of flame and flicker and the different quality of light that fire provides. The floor creaks in a familiar place as the building settles, that same board that always creaks at this hour or at this temperature, and the creak is expected enough to be unremarkable, just the building speaking its nighttime language. A throw blanket has a loose thread that would unravel if pulled, but no one is pulling. The thread simply existing as a small flaw in the fabric, a vulnerability that hasn't been exploited and might never be, might simply remain a loose thread until the blanket is discarded for other reasons. The lamp cord trails across the floor in its usual path, having found the route from outlet to lamp that works, that doesn't get stepped on, that doesn't trip anyone. And this path has become the cord's permanent position, part of the room's geography. The apartment holds its nighttime configuration, everything where it was left when the day ended. Nothing moved or adjusted since, and this configuration will persist until morning, or until someone decides to change something. The stillness of a space that isn't being actively used. The building around the apartment exists in its multi-unit way. Other lives happening in other units, separated by walls and floors and ceilings. And these other lives are quiet now, mostly asleep probably. The building at its lowest level of human activity. A magazine subscription card has fallen out of a magazine and lies on the floor beside the coffee table, the small cardstock rectangle that no one ever fills out, that usually gets thrown away when noticed, waiting there for its eventual disposal. The night outside the window maintains its darkness. No lightning yet, no sign that morning approaches, just the steady presence of night that could be early or late, depending on how one thinks about time when time feels suspended. A cup in the kitchen sink holds water that was used to rinse something. The cup sitting there in its rinsed state, waiting to be washed properly, or to be used again in its imperfectly cleaned condition. The small compromises of kitchen hygiene that happen when no one else is watching. The walls hold their decorations in place, pictures and mirrors, and whatever else has been hung, each one in its position secured by nails or screws or adhesive. The gallery of choices that has accumulated over the time of living here. A plant needs water, but doesn't know how to ask. Its leaves slightly drooping in the way that plants droop when thirsty, and the plant will be watered eventually, or will continue to droop until it either adapts or declines. The quiet drama of houseplant care. The refrigerator clicks back on, the compressor engaging, the hum returning, and the apartment's soundscape gains back this element that was temporarily absent. The white noise of food preservation resuming its background presence. A crack in the ceiling has a small cobweb stretched across it. A spider having used the architecture of damage for its own purposes. And this cobweb catches no prey at the moment, just existing in its silken way, part of the apartment's micro-ecosystem. The lamp continues its steady illumination, unchanged by the hours that have passed since it was turned on. The bulb doing what bulbs do, until they don't anymore. The light doing its simple work of pushing back darkness. The window frame shows its paint layers where the surface has worn. The history of color choices visible in this small archaeological record. White over green over something darker. Each layer the choice of someone who lived here before and wanted the windows to look a certain way. The floor beneath the rug holds whatever the floor holds. Dust probably. Crumbs that fell and rolled and were swept there by foot traffic over time. The small accumulation that happens in the spaces people don't see, waiting for the next cleaning that will lift the rug and reveal what's underneath. A photograph somewhere shows people who were younger when it was taken, the image frozen at a particular moment that has since passed, and the photograph does what photographs do, preserves a version of reality that no longer exists except in the preservation. The building makes sounds that travel through its structure. Footsteps from another floor. Water in pipes going somewhere. The general activity of an inhabited building, even when most of its inhabitants are asleep. And these sounds arrive muffled and sourceless. Outside, the city continues its minimal nighttime functioning. Whatever services run all night, whatever workers work the late shift. And this functioning is invisible from the apartment. Just the fact of lights in some windows and the occasional vehicle passing, and the general hum that never fully stops. A book on the shelf has been read so many times its spine is broken. The cover barely attached, pages that fall out when opened, and this book must be something loved to have been read this much, to have been damaged by appreciation rather than neglect. The couch offers its cushions in the lamplight, surfaces that have supported bodies through countless hours of sitting and lying, and the cushions wait for weight without expecting it, ready to compress and support whenever support is needed. A small stain on the carpet near the couch shows where something was spilled at some point, the cleaning attempt visible but incomplete, a reminder of some moment of accident that happened and was addressed and left its mark regardless. The night has a particular quality now, that feeling of being in the deepest part, the trough between evening and morning, when it seems like the night could last forever, and also like it might end at any moment. The paradox of perceived time, when actual time continues its steady march. A remote control battery is dying slowly, the infrared signal weakening each time the remote is used, and eventually the remote will stop working until the battery is replaced. But for now it functions, doing its job of controlling something that isn't being controlled at the moment. The apartment exists in its enclosed completeness, walls and floor and ceiling containing a life, containing the objects of a life, containing the space in which a life unfolds. And this containing is the apartment's primary function, its reason for being what it is. The walls absorb the lamplight and give back a version of it, the paint reflecting what it reflects and absorbing what it absorbs. And this interaction between light and surface creates the particular color and feeling of the room, the amber warmth that makes the space feel different at night than it does during the day. A piece of tape holds a small note to the refrigerator, something written and posted and probably no longer relevant. But the note remains because no one has removed it, doing its small job of reminding until the reminder is either heeded or forgotten completely. The window shows the same view it showed an hour ago and will show an hour from now. The building across the way, the slice of street visible at this angle, the darkness of the sky that might contain clouds or might contain nothing, the stable tableau of the nighttime city. A shoe has left a faint muddy mark on the floor near the door, the trace of some entry from outdoors that wasn't quite clean. And this mark has dried now, faint but visible if looked for, evidence of a transition from outside to inside that happened at some point. The ceiling shows its age in the way the paint has developed small cracks, lines that radiate from corners or that follow invisible stress points in the plaster. And these cracks are fine hairline, the kind that don't indicate structural problems, just the natural aging of materials. A pen has rolled under the couch at some point, now resting in the darkness there among dust and whatever else has accumulated under furniture that doesn't get moved often. And the pen waits to be found or to be forgotten, either outcome equally likely. The heat from the radiator rises in invisible currents, warming the air that rises to the ceiling and then circulates back down as it cools. The constant churning of temperature that makes the room feel evenly warm even though the heat source is localized. A magazine lies open to an article that someone started reading and didn't finish. The pages spread apart, the reading interrupted by something that seemed more important at the time, and the magazine holds its place, waiting for attention that may or may not return. The night outside has that quality of compressed time, where an hour can feel like minutes or like much longer, where the usual markers of passing time are absent, where only the slow movement of distant lights in distant windows suggests that anything is changing at all. The apartment holds its quiet, the lamp providing its light, the radiator providing its warmth, the walls providing their enclosure, everything in its place doing what it does, the machinery of home operating without supervision, the space being what spaces are when they're doing their job well. The floor receives the lamplight and holds it, the wood showing its grain more clearly than it would under brighter or more even illumination, each board distinct, each pattern of growth visible in the surface that was once part of a tree and is now part of a floor. A glass of water has been sitting long enough that it has reached room temperature, the molecules having equalized with the surrounding air, and the water waits in its glass, available to be drunk or to be poured out in the morning when a fresh glass seems preferable. The building settles again with a small sound, plaster or wood, adjusting to forces that are invisible but constant. And this settling is part of the building's ongoing relationship with gravity and weather and time. The slow process of structures finding their final forms. Outside, a light comes on in a window across the way. Someone waking or someone who never slept. And the light is visible for a moment and then goes off again. A brief signal from another life that happens and unhappens without explanation. The couch fabric has a smell that is the smell of the apartment, the scent having soaked into the fibers over years. And this smell is home, is familiar, is the olfactory version of what the visual version shows, a place where life happens. A small chip in the paint on the windowsill shows the layer beneath, a different color applied at some earlier time. And this chip is minor enough to ignore, but visible enough to notice. The small imperfection that every surface acquires with use. The lamp makes a sound that's almost too quiet to hear. The slight electrical hum of current flowing through wire. And this sound would only be noticed in absolute silence, which doesn't exist in a city apartment. So it goes unnoticed, present, but unheard. A calendar on the wall shows a month that might be current or might be past. The pages turned or not turned as the months passed, and the calendar's images show something decorative, landscapes, or animals, or art, chosen by whoever made the calendar for reasons that seemed good at the time of choosing. The night outside maintains its depth, the darkness complete, except for the artificial lights that punctuate it. And this depth is comfortable from inside, from within the warmth and light of the apartment. The darkness being something to look at rather than something to be in. The apartment continues in its quiet state, everything holding its position, nothing changing that can be observed changing. The kind of stillness that feels permanent, even though nothing is permanent. The pause between activities that extends without obvious end. The walls of the apartment have their own silence, the particular quiet that walls provide when they're doing their job of separating inside from outside. And this silence is filled with the small sounds of the apartment itself, but remains silence in the way that peace remains peace, even when small disturbances occur. A pillow on the couch has been pushed to one end. The casual arrangement of comfort that happens without thought, and the pillow rests there in its pushed position, fabric and filling doing what they do when not being used for support. The window glass holds its view of the outside world, framing what it frames, showing what falls within its rectangle, and this view is familiar enough to be ignored, looked through rather than at. The transparent barrier that brings the outside in visually while keeping it out physically. Outside a taxi passes, its light on top indicating availability, and the yellow or white shape moves through the field of vision and out of it. Another small event in the night's reduced traffic. Another moment that happens and passes without significance. The bookshelf stands against the wall in its loaded state, shelves bowed slightly from the weight of books, the whole structure having achieved whatever stability it will achieve, holding its contents as it has held them since the last rearrangement. A charging light blinks on a device somewhere, the small pulse of electronics doing their electronic things, and this blinking is visible in the periphery if attention wanders that direction. A tiny rhythm in the stillness. The radiator has grown quieter, the ticking less frequent, the temperature stable, and this quiet is the quiet of a job being done well, heat maintained without the effort being obvious, the infrastructure of comfort working as intended. A strand of hair lies on the back of the couch, fallen at some point and not noticed, and this single strand rests there in its curled state, evidence of the human life that uses this furniture, the small shedding that happens constantly without being tracked. The night feels like it has always been night, like morning is a story someone once told rather than something that will actually happen. And this feeling is comfortable rather than distressing. The present moment extending in both directions without effort. The lamp holds its steady glow against the darkness. The small pool of illumination it creates being enough, being sufficient for the hour and the need. The light asking nothing and offering everything it has to offer. The floor shows its wear patterns without comment. The paths that feet have taken becoming visible in the wood's response to traffic. and these patterns are invisible to those who walk them daily, visible only to attention that deliberately looks for them. A cup has been left on the coffee table, its contents gone or going cold, the ceramic holding its shape as ceramic does, waiting for the next hand that might lift it or wash it or simply move it to make room for something else. The building holds all its apartments in its structural embrace, this one among many, and the walls that separate one life from another do their work of separation, allowing proximity without intrusion, community without contact. Outside, the night continues its slow progression, time passing even when time seems to have stopped, the hands of a clock moving even when no one watches them move, the earth rotating even when the rotation feels like stillness. A small table lamp casts its light on whatever falls within its reach, the books and papers and objects that cluster near it, and this light creates a workspace or a reading nook, or simply a lit area within the larger dimness. The couch exists in its solid furniture way, holding its shape and position, ready for use whenever use is desired. And this readiness is the readiness of objects that don't have preferences, that accept whatever role they're asked to play. A window shows its reflection of the lamp at certain angles, the light doubled on the glass, existing both in the room and in the image of the room that the night dark window provides. The small hall of mirrors that windows become when darkness is outside and light is inside. The apartment has accumulated its particular quality over time, the feeling that makes it this apartment and no other. And this quality lives in the objects and the arrangement and the smell and the light and all the small details that combine into something that feels like home. A book lies closed on a shelf, its story waiting inside, the words dormant until eyes move across them, and the book is patient as books are, offering its contents without insisting, available to whoever might choose to open it. The night deepens or holds, or begins its slow retreat toward morning. Impossible to tell from inside, from within the steady lamplight that maintains its own small version of day. The hour existing in its bubble of present tense. The walls meet the ceiling in their molded corners, the joint covered by trim that was installed when the building was built, and this trim has been painted the same color as the ceiling or a different color, part of the room's architecture that frames everything that happens inside. A phone lies somewhere in the apartment, its screen dark, its notifications silenced or simply absent at this hour, and the phone waits in its electronic patience, ready to light up when something requires attention. For now, just another object among objects. The window shows the same building it has shown all night, the same windows, the same arrangement of lit and unlit rectangles that shifts slowly as people go to sleep or wake up. And this building is familiar the way neighbors are familiar, present, but not particularly noticed. A slight draft moves through the room, so slight it wouldn't move a flame if there were a flame to move. Just the small exchange of air that happens in old buildings. The imperfect ceiling that lets the outside in microscopic ways. The floor beneath the coffee table holds its collection of small things that have fallen and rolled. A pen cap, a coin perhaps. The debris of daily life that accumulates in low traffic areas, waiting for the next cleaning that will clear it away. A plant leaf has turned yellow. The plant's slow response to something. Not enough light, or not enough water, or just the natural cycle of growth and decline. And this yellow leaf will fall eventually, will be picked up or left to dry in its pot. The night outside the window maintains its quality of depth, the darkness complete where lights don't reach, the space between buildings filled with an absence that feels almost solid. And this depth is peaceful from the warm inside, something to observe without needing to enter. A small sound comes from the kitchen, something settling or something dripping, the isolated audio event that old apartments produce, and the sound doesn't repeat, leaving only the question of what made it, a question that doesn't need answering. The lamp cord lies on the floor in its familiar path, having found the route it takes from outlet to lamp. And this path is part of the room's geography now, known and accommodated, stepped over without thought by anyone who lives here. The apartment holds its configuration of objects and spaces, everything in the position it was left in, nothing moving that isn't supposed to move, the stillness of a space that is between uses, waiting for the next activity without being anxious about when it might come. The ceiling holds its position above everything, the flat plane that defines the upper limit of the interior space, and the ceiling does its job of being overhead, of containing the air and the warmth, of providing the surface from which lights hang and to which sounds rise. A blanket lies folded at the end of the couch, available for warmth if warmth is wanted, its fabric soft from washing and use, and the blanket waits in its folded state, offering without insisting comfort available but not required. The window frame shows its paint in the lamplight, the color that was chosen at some point, the texture of brush strokes or roller marks depending on how it was applied, and this paint does its protective work while also being decorative, function, and appearance combined. Outside, the city exists in its reduced state, the hour having winnowed away everyone who doesn't have to be awake. And this reduction is peaceful from inside, the quiet that comes when most people are sleeping, the calm that the night provides to those who are still present to notice it. A picture on the wall shows something that meant enough to frame and hang, a landscape or a face or an abstract pattern, and the picture does what pictures do, adds visual interest, fills wall space, reminds viewers of something, or simply provides something to look at. The floor creaks in its familiar spot. the board that always speaks when weight crosses it, and this creak is part of the apartment's voice, one of the sounds that make this place sound like this place and no other. A glass of water catches the lamplight and holds it, the liquid showing the glow from within, creating a small source of light that isn't actually a source, just a transparent medium that reveals what passes through it. The night has reached a point where it feels like pure night, unmixed with evening or morning, just the deep center of darkness that happens when the sun is far away and the city has quieted to its minimum, and the apartment holds its peace within the larger piece. A small stack of books on the coffee table shows reading that is in progress or reading that was abandoned, spines visible, titles that might be fiction or might be something else, the accumulation of words waiting to be continued or started or simply left. The apartment breathes in its building way, the subtle exchange of air that happens through whatever channels exist, vents and gaps, and the imperfect sealing of windows and doors, the living quality that even inanimate spaces have. The walls contain the space and define it, creating the boundaries that make inside possible. And these walls have stood for decades probably, holding position through seasons and years, doing their work of separation and enclosure without fanfare. A magazine lies open to a page that someone found interesting enough to pause on, the reading interrupted at this point, and the magazine holds its spread position, waiting for attention that might or might not return, the pages settling slowly into their open configuration. The window glass holds its temperature, cooler than the room, the surface where interior warmth meets exterior cold. And this meeting creates the condensation that fogs the edges, the visible evidence of the difference between inside and outside. Outside, a light goes on in a window somewhere, someone waking or someone who never slept, a brief signal from another life that happens without explanation. And then the light might stay on or might go off. The narrative of that window unknown and unknowable from here. The couch cushions have compressed into their familiar shapes, the foam having learned the bodies that use them most often. And these shapes are comfortable in the way that worn things are comfortable, fitted to use rather than pristine and uncertain. A clock ticks somewhere in the apartment, or perhaps not. The sound might be real or might be imagined, the kind of sound that attention searches for when everything else is quiet, the rhythmic punctuation that might or might not be there. The lamp continues its steady work, the bulb warm and bright, the light falling in its usual pattern. And this continuity is the lamp's gift to the room, the reliable illumination that makes everything else possible at this hour. A small collection of keys sits somewhere, on a hook or in a dish, the metal shapes that unlock the door, and perhaps other things, and the keys wait in their collected state, ready for the next departure whenever departure happens. The night outside the window holds steady, neither advancing toward morning nor retreating back toward evening, just existing in its nighttime way, the darkness complete, and the city quiet, and the hour suspended in its bubble of present tense. The apartment holds all of this, the objects and the spaces and the light and the warmth, containing everything that makes a home. And this containing is what the apartment does, what it was built to do, what it does every night regardless of who is present to notice. The floor receives the weight of furniture and holds it, the boards having learned their loads over years. And this holding is the floor's purpose, its reason for being, the solid surface that makes everything above it possible. A strand of light escapes through the gap in the curtains, falling on the windowsill in a thin line. The lamp's glow finding its way out of the contained space. And this escaping light is minor, a small breach in the enclosure that no one would notice from outside. The walls have heard countless hours of silence like this, nights when nothing happened and no one spoke, and the apartment just existed in its apartment way, and the walls hold no memory of these hours, but have absorbed them somehow, have become what they are partly through this accumulation. Outside the building across the way shows its familiar face, windows arranged in their grid, fire escapes making their diagonal lines. The architecture of ordinary urban living that is visible from this window every day and every night. A pen lies on a table near where someone might sit, the writing implement available for whatever writing might be needed, and the pen rests in its resting position, pointing in some direction that means nothing, waiting to be picked up and used. The refrigerator maintains its hum, the constant sound that disappears from awareness, and then returns when attention returns to it. And this hum is the sound of preservation, of cold being held against the warmth of the room. A slight variation in the lamp's light might be real or might be imagined. The small flicker that could indicate the bulb's slow decline, or could indicate nothing at all. And this variation passes without consequence, the light continuing its work regardless. The night holds the apartment in its dark embrace, the hours passing even when they seem to stand still. And this holding is gentle, is peaceful, is the particular quality of late night when the world has quieted, and the space feels more private than usual. A cushion on the couch shows the indent where someone sat at some point, the foam remembering the weight that compressed it. And this memory is temporary, the cushion slowly returning to its original shape, the evidence of sitting fading as the material recovers. The apartment exists in its nighttime state, everything holding position, nothing changing that can be seen to change. The stillness of a space that is complete in itself, that needs nothing from the outside, that simply is what it is in the quiet hours when being is enough. The walls meet each other in the corners of the room, vertical lines where surfaces join, and these corners gather shadow or hold light depending on their relationship to the lamp. The geometry of the space creating its own patterns of illumination and darkness. A book on the shelf has a title that catches the edge of the lamplight. The gold or silver letters reflecting what light reaches them. And the book offers its title to anyone who might look, advertising itself in the small way that books advertise. The window continues to show what it shows. The view that has been the view all night, buildings and street and sky. The composition that changes slowly as lights go on and off in other windows, as the night progresses toward whatever comes next. Outside, a car door closes somewhere, the sound traveling through the night air to arrive here diminished, but recognizable. Someone getting in or out of a vehicle at this hour, when most vehicles are parked and most people are asleep. The floor has a particular smell when attention turns to it. Wood and dust, and whatever has been tracked in on shoes. And this smell is part of the apartment's overall scent. One note in the olfactory cord that makes this place smell like itself. A small lamp on a shelf has been turned off for the night, its bulb cold, its switch in the off position, waiting for the next time someone wants its particular illumination, and it waits without impatience. Objects having no relationship with time the way people do. The night maintains its depth outside the window, the darkness as complete as it was an hour ago, as it will be an hour from now, the unchanging quality of nighttime that makes the passage of time invisible until morning begins to light the sky. A cushion has found its position at the end of the couch, leaning against the arm in a way that might be comfortable for a head. And this position is the result of use or accident. The cushion ending up where it ended up without anyone deciding it should be there. The radiator holds its warmth now without making sound, the metal having reached the temperature it reaches, the heat emanating in its quiet way, doing its job of warming without drawing attention to itself. The apartment continues in its nighttime way, the lamp glowing, the warmth holding, the objects resting in their places, everything maintaining the configuration it was left in, the stillness of a space that has found its equilibrium and has no reason to disturb it. The ceiling holds above the room, the flat expanse that defines the upper boundary of the living space, and this ceiling has been looked at, and not looked at by everyone who has ever lived here, present but unremarkable, doing its job of being overhead. A glass holds water that no one is drinking, the liquid sitting in its container, reflecting light from the lamp in small ways, and the water is patient as water is, taking the shape of whatever holds it, waiting for whatever comes next. The window frame has a small chip in one corner, the paint having flaked away at some point, revealing the wood beneath. And this chip is visible if looked for, but invisible if not. The kind of minor damage that becomes part of the landscape through familiarity. Outside the night continues without event. the darkness holding, the quiet maintaining, the city at its lowest ebb of activity. And this continuation is the night's nature, to be what it is, until the sun changes it into something else. A strand of cobweb hangs from the ceiling in one corner, too delicate to see unless the light catches it just right. The work of a spider that may or may not still be present. The residue of small lives that share the space without invitation. The couch holds its shape in the lamplight, the furniture equivalent of waiting, ready for use whenever use is wanted. And this readiness is what couches offer, the promise of comfort available at any moment. A small sound from the building, something structural or something mechanical, the isolated noise that buildings make, and the sound doesn't repeat, leaving only the memory of having heard something, a moment that passes into silence. The lamp continues to burn, the light steady and warm, the small sun that has replaced the real one for these hours. And this burning is the lamp's purpose, its reason for existing, what it does until it's told to stop. The night holds the apartment, and the apartment holds its contents, and the contents hold their positions, the nested holdings of domestic life, everything where it was placed, or where it fell, or where it ended up through the ordinary processes of living. The apartment exists in its quiet state, warm and lit and still, the hours passing without obvious sign of their passage, time moving in whatever way time moves when no one is measuring it, the night continuing until it becomes morning, the stillness holding until something disturbs it, everything simply being what it is in this moment that stretches and holds and feels like it could last forever. The walls hold their painted surfaces in the lamplight, the color that has become the color of this room. And these surfaces are smooth where they are smooth and textured where they are textured. The particular character of walls that have been walls for a long time. A blanket lies available on the couch, fabric that would be soft against skin, warmth that would add to the room's warmth. And the blanket offers itself without words, the mute generosity of objects that exist to provide comfort. The window shows its view and its reflection, both, the outside world visible through the glass, the inside world visible on it, the two realities overlapping in that nighttime way that windows create. Outside nothing changes that can be seen to change, the night maintaining itself, the darkness complete, the city quiet, and this unchanging quality is restful, is peaceful, is what the hour offers to those who are present to receive it. The apartment holds its peace through the remaining hours, whatever those hours might be, the lamp burning, the warmth holding, the objects resting, everything in its place, nothing requiring attention, the space simply existing as spaces exist when they are doing their job of containing life, the night outside and the warmth inside, the darkness and the light, the quiet that holds everything without asking for anything in return.